Well, good afternoon, everybody. How is your day on safari so far? Everybody's having a good day? Yeah, that's good to hear. Well, my name is Emma, and along with my team, we are going to be free-flying some predatory birds for all of you today. You're going to get an up-close look at them, but I'm also going to let you know what makes them so unique, as well as useful to the environments in which they can be found in. Now, when it does come to our very first bird, he is going to demonstrate how he would hunt a fast-moving ground prey item. But in order to get him on out here, we're going to need everybody's help. We're going to do a little bit of a countdown from 3. Is everybody ready? Yeah? All right, let's get this started. 3, 2, 1. Coming on out from this side will be Captain Trips, our red-tailed hawk. Now, the red-tailed hawk is one of the most common hawk species you find right here in North America. They, of course, get that name from that beautiful, broad, brownish red tail that they do have. In fact, this is going to be your main indicator that you are, in fact, looking at a red-tailed hawk in our area, because we do have some smaller species as well. However, the red-tailed hawk is typically found on farmers' fields, and on fences, even on telephone poles and telephone wires. Typically, they hunt things such as smaller mammal species, some reptiles, as well as birds. And although they are quite skilled hunters, as Captain Trips demonstrated for us today, they're also very lazy hunters. So we often see them along the telephone poles and telephone wires because they like to sit there and wait for cars to do all the hard work for them. So they will wait for cars to hit other animals along the roadside, unfortunately creating roadkill, but then all the hawk has to do is make sure the coast is clear, hop on down to the road, and they have a pretty easy meal to eat for the day. Now, red-tailed hawks are solitary hunters, meaning they primarily like to hunt by themselves, and in fact, they primarily actually like to live by themselves, and this is why we only ever really see one in an area at a time. Well, our next bird is going to make his way out in just a moment is a little bit different. I'm hoping everybody recognizes this kind of bird. His name is Theo, and he is our barred owl. Now, the barred owl is native to North America, where they can be found in the dense forest areas. And one of these guys, or these guys are actually what we call a nocturnal species of owl. So if you guys get a good look at Theo's eyes, you'll notice they're very dark in color. This is one of your first indications of a nocturnal species. And in fact, only about 50% of all owl species truly hunt at nighttime. The rest of them prefer to hunt either at dawn and at dusk, meaning they are crepuscular species, or even during the daytime, known as a diurnal species. Now, you may have noticed Theo rotating his head quite a bit. It's a bit of a myth that owls can rotate their head a full 360 degrees. This would be quite interesting, of course, but they can only go about 270 degrees, and this isn't partial to owls. Actually, all bird species are able to do this. Now, of course, hawks and owls are actually members of a very specific grouping of birds that we like to call the raptors. It's typically what people imagine when they hear the words bird of prey, and this also will include your eagles and your falcons. However, our next bird who's going to make his way out is a little bit of a different kind of bird of prey. You may be thinking that we are trying to draw inspiration from Jurassic Park, bringing dinosaurs back to life, but I can assure you that is not necessary, because birds today are in fact living dinosaurs. Now, they are ancestors of their prehistoric selves, and if you don't believe me, check out Albert as he makes his way in today. He is, of course, a marabou stork. Now, the marabou stork can be found out in the plains of Africa, where they show off this impressive wingspan, which is about 12 feet from tip to tip, and they usually have a pretty good beak-to-eye coordination when they need it. Now that he's up nice and close, though, everybody can take a look at just how large this bird is. But you may also start to think this is also quite possibly the ugliest bird I've ever seen in my entire life. Do not feel too bad for Albert. As I mentioned, he's a different kind of bird of prey because he is what we call a scavenger. This simply means that he likes to eat dead things. So this bald head and neck of his may not look that attractive to your eye, but it is quite practical to the marabou stork because he typically has his head in dead carcasses out in Africa. So he is going to get blood and guts on his head, of course, but having that bald scalp without feathers is going to make sure that his other feathers stay clean, because any of that blood can easily bake off in the African sun, and then he's good to go for another day. Now, you may notice also as he heads on out that his legs are very white. I hate to tell you all, this is not the natural color of a marabou stork's legs. Naturally, they are actually black in color. The reason they are white is because he practices something called urohydrosis. Now, this is basically a big fancy word for simply saying that Albert loves to pee and poo all over his own legs. Pretty gross and disgusting, I know. Definitely does not help with his image issue, but it is another practical thing that marabou storks do to keep nice and cool out in the hot African sun. Now, I'm certainly hoping while you guys were walking through our Bird of Prey Conservation Center, you actually noticed that most of our birds are in pairs. Now, we do have an extensive breeding program here at the safari, which has allowed for lots and lots of babies. Well, our next bird who's going to make his way out is actually going to help us answer the age-old question of where do babies come from. I'm, of course, talking about Storky. He is our European white stork. So he is another example of a different kind of bird of prey. He's actually what we call a wading bird, but the European white stork is unique because they take a 9-month migration each and every year. Now these guys take that migration from Europe, as their name suggests, all the way to Africa and then all the way back. Coincidentally, it happens to be the same length of time as a human pregnancy, which is what makes them seem like they are the bringers of human babies. Now, I did mention he's a different kind of bird of prey, of course. He is what we call a wading bird. This simply means that he likes to wade into or walk into shallow to deeper watery areas. So they can typically be found near river areas because that's where they find some of their favorite prey items. Typically, a stork like this is looking for things such as worms, crustaceans, or even fish that he would like to eat. So he needs to be nice and careful as he enters that watery area. He doesn't want to disturb the silt underneath the water too much, and he definitely doesn't want to move too quickly because he may scare away some of those fish. Once he can sneak up on one of those fish, he can actually spear it right out of the water using that nice long bill of his. Well, our next bird who's going to make his way out happens to be one of our most unique raptors of them all. We are going to hop on back to our raptors, of course, since everybody knows them so well as birds of prey. But when it comes to Johnny, our striated caracara, he's a little more special than some of the other ones you guys may see, and that's simply because he is one of the rarest raptor species in the world. Now, he can only be found out in the Falkland Islands, and as Johnny is demonstrating for you guys, they are very comfortable on the ground. Seems very weird for a bird of prey or a raptor to be so comfortable on the ground. Well, out in the Falkland Islands, there are not very many trees for these birds to perch on, so they actually have become masters at becoming ground hunters. And not only are they comfortable around people and comfortable on top of the ground, but they also figured out they're comfortable underneath it. They're not claustrophobic at all because some of these birds love to hunt these small burrows of other animals. So they will enter these narrow burrows underneath the ground of smaller mammal species, navigating these twists and turns no problem at all. And then once he reaches that main den of that animal, he's going to do what raptors do best, or birds of prey do best, and he's going to start hunting. Being underground, trapped with a raptor like this is not the greatest story for a small mammal species because it makes for a very easy hunt for a striated caracara. Now, I did mention they are quite intelligent as well. These guys actually figured out that if they were able to team up and work together, they were able to bring down larger prey items. Now, in this case, these guys typically will hunt sheep on farmers' fields as a pack together. But as you can imagine, farmers were not very big fans of this. They did consider them pest birds, and they tried to eliminate them from the environment. Luckily, though, for our unique striated caracaras, they are now listed as a protected species. It's illegal to hunt them out in the Falkland Islands, and this once again has allowed their numbers to rise to about 500 breeding pairs out on these islands, and the numbers continue to rise today. Now, although they are quite lucky and their numbers are going up, our next birds need a little bit of help with a couple of conservation projects. They have a very bad reputation of being gross, disgusting birds. However, I do want to let you all know they happen to be some of the most important birds in the entire world. So hopefully we can change your opinion of these guys. Donovan and Dyson here are some of our black vultures. Now, the black vultures can be found from southeastern United States down through South America, typically through Chile and Uruguay. However, vultures are so important to the environment, you can find different species all over the world. Right here in Canada, we have our very well-known turkey vultures, and they all play the exact same role as nature's very own cleanup crew. So they actually help, being scavengers, they actually help to clean up a lot of the death and decay in our environment. We do often see them along roadsides feeding on garbage and roadkill. But if you think about it, they're doing quite their favor to you and I because they are helping to eliminate the spread of harmful germs and diseases in our environments. Now, the reason they can do this actually is because they have very specialized stomach acids that help them break down all of these toxins, diseases, and germs that we do find. Even things such as rabies or anthrax that would be able to kill your eye, the vulture has no problem breaking those down. Now the populations of the black vulture and the turkey vulture are actually doing quite well, thank goodness, because that means we are nice and healthy here as well. We're quite protected. But unfortunately, not all of the vulture species are doing just as well. The ones you find out in India and Africa are actually going through a major vulture crisis at the moment. Now in the past decade alone, we have seen over a 99% decrease in all of the vulture species. Now the reason this is such an issue is because everywhere we see these declines in the vultures, we also see an increase in the amount of human death and disease that follows. So our very own health and our very own lives actually tie directly to how well our vulture populations are doing out in the wild. But hopefully in the next coming years, there are many conservation projects working desperately hard to try and save these vulture species. So our fingers are crossed that in the next coming decade or so, their numbers start to rise once again. So their conservation story is still in the works. However, when it does come to our very next bird who's going to make his way out in just a moment, they actually have one of the happiest conservation stories of all. I'm hoping everybody recognizes Kenai as he heads on down our field. If you know what he is, shout it on out. A bald eagle, of course. Now, what many people do not realize that unlike many raptors who prefer to feed on mammals, the bald eagle is an excellent fisherman. For this reason, we often see them by lakesides or even riverways high up in the trees waiting to go hunting for the day. So we're going to demonstrate a little bit of a hunt for everybody. What an eagle typically would do as it's soaring over the water is staying nice and close to the surface. Reason being, he doesn't want to cast too large of a shadow to give away his position and scare the fish, but that way when a fish pops to the surface, they can grab it without any problem at all and take off to go enjoy their meal. Now, birds of prey are very instinct-based. Of course, he's going to go over whatever fish comes first, and on the rare occasion, he may grab one a little heavier than he expected, and it's going to pull him into the water. Don't be too worried about this. The eagles are equipped for this, of course. They're going to use those nice big wings of theirs like paddles or oars, and they will actually swim to the closest raft or shore area while holding on to that fish, where he then can enjoy his meal. I did, however, mention they have a very happy conservation story. In the 1970s, farmers were using a pesticide on their fields called DDT. Now, luckily, it didn't kill the adult bald eagles outright. However, it did impact their ability to uptake calcium. Without that calcium in their bodies to actually form their eggs properly, they would come out very brittle. And when the females actually went to incubate her eggs, she would accidentally crush each and every one. Now, when we don't have babies coming into a population as the older generations die off, unfortunately you see a population start to decline, and that is exactly what put the bald eagle on the endangered species list. We almost lost them right here in our environments, of course. We almost, it was quite risky with the bald eagles. Their numbers did plummet quite a lot. However, scientists luckily figured out that DDT was the problem. They banned it from most countries around the world, including Canada, and due to captive breeding and release programs, just like we do here at African Lion Safari. I'm very happy to tell all of you, as of 2007, the bald eagle was removed from the endangered species list. There we go. Yeah, you guys can clap for the bald eagle. This is excellent news, not only for our very majestic raptors. They are a very iconic species, of course. Their numbers actually have climbed so much that we can once again see them right here in Ontario. It is native habitat for the bald eagles. So next time you guys are at the cottage or the lake, keep your eyes peeled. You might get lucky enough to see a wild bald eagle, or even while you're right here at Safari, we have been known to have a wild pair fly over now and then. But it actually is excellent news for our conservation projects as well. It just goes to show how much of a difference we truly can make with these wild populations when we do participate in these captive breeding and release programs. Now, we are currently working on one with the endangered eastern loggerhead shrike. It's a small predatory songbird we have right here in North America. And in the past couple decades, we've been able to release just over 1,000 individuals into their homes of Ontario. So this is excellent news for our little shrikes. However, they still are on the endangered species list, so we still have a little bit of work to go. But we would like to take the opportunity to thank all of you guys, because without all of your support and you visiting us on Safari today, we would never be able to work on these conservation projects that are truly so important to the environment. So we do want to extend a gigantic thank you to each and every one of you guys for joining us today. We certainly hope that you enjoyed our presentation, but we also hope you enjoy the rest of your day here on Safari.